Welcome to This Explainer. If you've glanced at the news lately, you've probably seen the alarming headlines about the MV Hantavirus. It's a cruise ship currently stranded off the coast of West Africa with a deadly virus on board. Honestly, it sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, right? And frankly, those headlines have sparked a ton of anxiety. But today, we're going to rely on the facts to cut through all that noise. We're taking a calm, grounded look at data directly from the World Health Organization, the UK Health Security Agency, and leading medical institutions to decode exactly what's happening on that ship.
So let's just dive right in and address the elephant in the room. Take a look at this quote from a recent BBC News report. It mentions PCR testing from the COVID days and mandating self-isolation for 6 weeks. Now, when you read something like that, it's incredibly easy to feel that 2020 panic creeping right back in. Our pandemic memories are still incredibly fresh. But as we'll see in just a moment, this specific situation is fundamentally different from what we experienced with COVID-19.
Section 1. Panic on the MV Hantavirus, a cruise ship crisis. To understand why this is so different, we first need to look at the actual crisis currently unfolding out on the water.
The timeline really starts in early April 2026, when the MV Hantavirus set sail from the southern tip of Argentina. Everything seemed fine, but by May 3rd, the ship was forced to drop anchor off the coast of Tenerife and Cape Verde because of a suspected viral outbreak on board. Between May 5th and 7th, the situation tragically escalated. 3 passenger deaths were confirmed, which prompted the World Health Organization to issue a formal response. Then, by May 11th, a massive, highly complex operation kicked off to repatriate passengers from 23 different nationalities. And here's the kicker. Because of the virus's incredibly long incubation period, health authorities in the UK and France had to mandate severe 42 to 45-day isolation periods for those returning passengers.
Section 2. What is Hantavirus? The science behind the headlines. Let's pivot away from the chaotic news cycle for a second and look at the actual biology of the pathogen at the center of this emergency.
The culprit here is Hantavirus. Now, this is a family of zoonotic viruses. Zoonotic simply means it jumps from animals to humans, and in this case, the carriers are primarily rodents, like mice and rats. What's fascinating, and honestly kind of devious about hantavirus, is that the rodents themselves don't actually get sick. They just carry the virus and shed it into their environment, creating this massive invisible hazard for any human that happens to cross their path.
Section 3. The 1993 medical mystery, the Four Corners outbreak. To deeply understand today's outbreak, we actually need to rewind and look at how scientists first cracked this code over 30 years ago.
Back in 1993, a terrifying medical mystery unfolded in the U.S. Southwest, specifically in the Four Corners region. It all started when a young, completely healthy Navajo man suddenly passed away from unexplained respiratory failure. Medical personnel were totally baffled. But then they realized his fiancée had died just days earlier with the exact same symptoms. This immediately triggered a massive CDC investigation. They realized it wasn't an herbicide exposure or a weird new strain of the flu, it was a virus. By exhaustively trapping rodents in the victim's shared environments, scientists successfully linked the syndrome to the common deer mouse. They figured out that years of drought, followed by unusually heavy rains, had caused the local deer mouse population to absolutely explode, and that pushed them into much closer contact with humans.
Section 4. The Andes strain exception. Why this outbreak is different. Which naturally brings us to a massive, glaring question about our current situation.
If hantavirus is a disease you typically catch from rural deer mice, why on earth is it spreading on a luxury cruise ship in the middle of the ocean? Normally, you catch standard hantavirus by cleaning enclosed, poorly ventilated sheds or barns. You breathe in dust that's been contaminated by dried rodent urine or droppings. It's largely considered an occupational hazard for farming or forestry work. And crucially, standard hantavirus does not spread between humans. If you get sick, your family is completely safe from catching it directly from you.
But here is the crucial twist. The MV Hantavirus outbreak involves a very specific, incredibly rare variant called the Andes strain. Found in South America, which is where our cruise ship originally departed from, the Andes strain is the only known hantavirus capable of human-to-human transmission. It's still rare, and it requires very close, prolonged, and intimate contact with an infected person, but it is the terrifying exception to the rule. And this is exactly what allowed the virus to move from a passenger who likely contracted it while traveling through rural South America to other people on the ship.
Section 5. Symptoms and survival rates. Understanding the medical risks. With that context in place, we really need to look at exactly what happens when someone contracts this virus. And I'll warn you, the data is quite sobering.
50%. That is how high the case fatality rate can be for severe hantavirus infections in the Americas. Now, more recent data suggest it might hover closer to 38% for some outbreaks, but the stark medical reality remains. This is an incredibly dangerous, highly lethal disease for those unfortunate enough to contract it.
The disease progression is just brutal. It has this stealthy incubation period of anywhere from 1 to 8 weeks, and that explains exactly why health agencies are demanding those severe 45-day quarantines for the evacuated passengers. The early phase kind of just feels like a severe flu. You get fatigue, fever, deep muscle aches, but then it branches out. In the Americas, it usually causes hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome, or HCPS, where the lungs rapidly fill with fluid, causing acute shortness of breath. Over in Europe and Asia, different strains cause HFRS, leading to internal bleeding and acute kidney failure. And the hardest truth of all? There's no vaccine. There's no specific antiviral cure. Survival relies entirely on getting early, intensive hospital care, like oxygen therapy and mechanical ventilation, to literally keep the patient alive while their own immune system fights off the virus.
Section 6. The next global pandemic. Separating fear from fact. Seeing those symptoms and fatality rates, it's completely natural to ask, is this the beginning of the next global pandemic?
The short answer is absolutely not, and the differences between hantavirus and COVID-19 are stark. Look, COVID-19 was a masterclass in airborne efficiency. It spread so easily through casual contact in grocery stores, schools, public transit. But the Andes strain of hantavirus, while theoretically capable of human-to-human spread, requires very close, prolonged contact. We're talking about sharing a small cabin on a cruise ship or directly caring for a sick spouse. Public health agencies like the WHO and the UK Health Security Agency are definitive on this. The risk to the wider global public is extremely low. There's not going to be a global lockdown over this. It is a severe tragedy for those involved, but it's a highly contained, scientifically understood situation.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Our collective radar for global health news has been permanently altered. A virus isolated to a single cruise ship now commands international attention and instant comparisons to the darkest days of 2020. So I want to leave you with this to think about. In a post-2020 world, how do our pandemic memories change the way we react to isolated global health news? Do they make us safer and more prepared, or do they just trigger unnecessary panic? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured look at the facts has left you better informed and maybe a little more at ease.